Now joining us from the San Jose Mercury News, no stranger to our show, Elliott Almond. Elliott, how you been?
Great. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Fantastic to have you on, but I had to have you on today after watching bits and pieces of that game last night. My mouth was left wide open a numerous amount of times last night watching that on Kansas City soil. Before this game, so many were predicting Kansas City is the team to beat along with LA for the championship. And then Dominic Kinnear and the boys go in there and spank Kansas City. Did you see this coming?
Oh, of course not. First of all, I don't think anything changes regarding Kansas City and LA. Two fantastic teams that we really need to keep watching. Vancouver as well, of course. But, you just think about the Friday night victory. The Quakes had a winless streak of 6, which they ended as they squeaked out a 1-0 victory over Colorado. They showed no signs of doing anything that we saw last night, none whatsoever.
Elliott, I look at this squad and I say to myself, obviously a world-class player, a national team player for USA in Chris Wondolowski, a scoring machine. And then I look down after that and I see guys that have bounced all over MLS. You look at Marvell Wynn. He joined us on the show a couple weeks ago. Marvell's been to a few teams. You look at Quincy America. He's been to a number of teams. On and on. You look at a number of players here. And let's not forget also Clarence Goodson, who's been a standout along with Wondolowski. And you say to yourself, wow, Dominic Kinnear again gets the most out of each and every player, especially guys that have bounced here and there all over the league.
No question about that, Anthony. From day one, and we've talked about this a little bit earlier in the season on the show, but, the team really responded immediately to Dom and his staff and what they demanded. And I think there's a much more professional atmosphere, and this is not to take anything away from previous two coaches. It's just a formula that really is working and resonates with these players. Here's how you really see it. Think about guys like Cordell Cato and Sean Francis. They aren't always in the starting lineup and are right now perhaps because of injuries. But anytime they were called upon, they have responded in a positive manner. And yes, a lot of that goes to them as human beings, but I think it also is the atmosphere that Dom has created with his staff.
And let's talk about that atmosphere. You talked about professionalism brought this year with Dominic Kinnear and his staff. What is it? Is it accountability, Elliott? Is it respect? What is it? Because obviously from coaches in the past, they didn't succeed there in the last number of years, but now Dominic is succeeding at the right time.
Yeah, and look, they're going to need to win quite a few games to make the playoff. They have 10 games left, and they probably need 6 victories out of those 10 games. So it's still a long ways to the playoffs for this team. But no matter what, this is a much better team than last year, maybe the last 2 years. And that is because of, I believe, a big part of it was the standard was set from day one about accountability. Practices have been run on a regular schedule every time, so you just have that sort of sense of professionalism. Here's when you practice, here's when you're ready to go. Nothing changes. It's the same way every day, and every week, I should say. And then really, I think Dom, they know coming in, this is a guy that's led teams to the MLS Cup title. So he had immediate respect, I think. And then he earned it, I think, by the way he conducts himself and what he demands. Look, he's not afraid to get in anybody's face, and I mean anybody. So, and if he has to speak Spanish to do it, he'll speak Spanish to do it.
That's unbelievable. But why not get in somebody's face? He has the respect, he has the results from the past, and he has the demeanor to do that. So if I was a player under Dominic Kinnear, I would respect and listen to everything he has to say because he brings a winning attitude. You talked about the playoffs still maybe a long shot. I got to tell you, Elliott, I'm not so sure about that. Seattle is floundering, and they are not getting better week in and week out. They're 3 points, if I'm not mistaken, ahead of San Jose, and San Jose has a game in hand. And if they don't watch themselves, San Jose, the way they've been playing lately, could sneak up and get in that position that they're in. And then if I'm any team in the West, I wouldn't want to face this team under Dominic Kinnear.
No, that's all true. It's what makes MLS interesting, at least in the western side of the conference right now. You think of Houston and Real Salt Lake are behind San Jose at the moment, and those teams could come alive just as much as San Jose is just at this very week. So you just don't know, and it should go down to the end of October. So by Halloween, I guess we'll really know for sure. But the fact is, I think it's going to take at least 50 points, and San Jose is going to need 6 victories to get to that 50-point level.
Elliott, this Western Conference, I've said it time and time again. We had on Marcel De Jong of Sporting Kansas City on last week. We had Paulo Torneghi, goalkeeper with the Whitecaps, on recently as well. And we talked about the Western Conference. I mean, there's not a game you can take off. There's not an opponent you can't overlook. I mean, with all due respect to the East, look, Chicago has been abysmal. I mean, New York City FC has been okay lately. But, there's games there in the East that can be easily overlooked, but not in the West. It is a deadly conference.
Oh, and I think the greatest example of that is Colorado, which is arguably really, really suffering this year. And the Quakes were, it's not fair to say they were lucky to win 1-0 at home, but it took a tremendous effort to break that team down. It's one of the teams that has given up the least amount of goals in the entire league. So they're just not scoring enough to get enough points here. But it's exactly true. So it's fun for me as a writer, in the middle of it, figuring out what's what. I mean, look, the Quakes, they go to D.C. Saturday. They're in D.C. now, but they're playing D.C. Saturday. That's the Eastern Conference leader. Then they come home and they've got the Galaxy, arguably the 2 top teams in the league point-wise right now. Not arguably, but they are 44 and 43 points. So it's just a nightmare. And Dominic was just talking about it an hour ago to me. They know it. Even though they have 7 of the last 9 at home, it doesn't mean they're going to win them.
No, but if they can come away with a win out of those 2, especially those 2 that are leading each of their conferences, watch out. Then anything else is possible.
I think so. And, you haven't asked us yet, but they made one new addition with the Panamanian midfielder, Anibal Godoy, 25-year-old kid. And in the 2 games, he just immediately flew in and started playing and acted like he's been on this team the whole season. And particularly last night, although, last night's game might have been a little bit of an outlier, but he was paired with the rookie, Fatai Alashe, and I just thought they looked fantastic. We really haven't seen the midfield look like that all season.
Elliott, you talked about San Jose adding this great player. Let's get your thoughts on the league, the way it has grown in 2015 in leaps and bounds. We see Andrea Pirlo with New York City FC. Jovinko, to me, has been an MVP this season in MLS for what he has done. Lampard, Gerrard, Kaká, on and on and on and on. I think the league finally is getting some respect it deserves. You and I followed this league for a number of years, and I think finally it's not being considered a retirement league. You talk to Dominic quite a bit, day in and day out. What's his thoughts on all these great players that are coming, especially, obviously, here in Toronto with Jovinko?
Well, I think based on the one game they had against the Reds, he'd rather have that guy stay in Italy. I mean, he made the Quakes look. Do you remember that game?
Oh, of course.
Oh my God! I think everybody seeing that just went. I got to tell you, a lot of Quakes fans were tweeting me or asking me, "How come we can't get somebody on that kind of quality?" and it just that's such a big pickup. And I think that's where the MLS could really make strides if they can get more guys like that. Maybe they don't have the biggest name, but they've got the pedigree. But to answer your question, I apologize for not directly answering it here. And we may have talked about this before, but if you think 5 years ago in MLS, and frankly, if you think 3 years ago, it's an entirely different league than it was just a few years ago. That's how much it's grown to me. And what's going to be interesting is to see if, Americans sort of catch up to what's going on.
And I think they are, especially with the success in Brazil in the last World Cup. I think they are. There's more appetite for MLS games to be watched and attended. There's more appetite to know who's coming and going. But I've got a major concern for a few cities, and I'll let you go after you answer this, Elliott. I'm concerned about Chicago, the way they have been the last number of years, and the apathy with their fans. And to me, that hurts because I think it's a great, great footy town. That's number one. I said this at the beginning of the year. If Philadelphia doesn't get into the playoffs, that's going to be a huge blow to that city because of their supporters and the way they support that team. Those two teams, to me, really need to get things turned around, and I don't see enough support in Columbus as well. Your thoughts?
It's interesting. Great question, as always. Let's just start by talking about Toronto. It was fits and starts for a long, long time, and I think people are feeling a lot better right now. And of course, look what happened with all the changes. I'm just wondering, since you've asked this question, if Chicago and Philadelphia in particular are going to need to kind of continue to go through, long-term growing pains. I feel like Philadelphia had a great start when they got into the league. They had the stadium. And then it seemed like they just were making wholesale changes, like they didn't know what they wanted. And they need to find some stability, and I think Toronto figured that out. Chicago, I feel really bad. As you know, Frank Yallop is the guy I started with in the league. And you would hope that he can figure things out, but I think time is potentially, running out on him. I don't know how much patience they're going to have, and I definitely agree. Chicago needs to get it going because, in North America, that could be a real hub kind of soccer town.
Elliott, always a pleasure having you on. We really appreciate taking time out of your busy schedule. It was an unbelievable night for San Jose Earthquake fans, the way that they dismantled that Sporting Kansas City team. And to me, like I said, if they get a couple more wins, maybe one out of the next two, watch out. I think they could really catch Seattle, and then they could be a dangerous opponent in the playoffs. Elliott, thank you so much again. Have a wonderful weekend, and we really appreciate you joining us.
You're welcome. Always glad to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Elliott Almond of the San Jose Mercury News. Class act, a guy that knows his stuff inside out, follows the Earthquakes, and is always, always well-spoken. It is a chess match when I have Elliott on. We'll take a quick commercial.